I got a message from a young man asking me where he could get the same type of understanding of economy and business that I have over time. And I'm not criticizing the question at all, because it's a question I get quite a bit, and I'm not unsympathetic to it, because we all start somewhere. And for me, I don't go into my background very often, but this started for me when I was about maybe 13, and it just continued from there. And so when you start that early, you gain a lot of experience, and of course, experience begets experience. It's kind of how it works. There's sort of a logarithmic or stacking effect that happens when you go out into the real world, and you don't have any real support. You don't really have any. You have everybody taking advantage of you at every step of the way, and I've been taken advantage of more than probably any 10 people I know, and I've failed more than probably any 10 people I know at all kinds of things. And all of these things over time, which are negative experiences, in many cases, they're like hugely negative experiences that cost fortunes to dig my way out of. That's where all that experience comes from. That's really where it comes from. It's forging. It's refining. It's a refining process. So I'm answering your question, but I have to answer it in this way, because there isn't any one set of books I could tell you to read and then you're going to just be imparted with all of this knowledge. This is the analogy I use with this is flying a plane. As a pilot myself, I will tell you that you can do ground school all day long, and you can talk about aviation theory all day long. And we can talk about, the wind going over the wings, and, how the fuselage and aerodynamics and, thrust, and we can talk about that stuff all day long in terms of the theoretical, but until you're in the left chair and you're in the sky, right? And until you're there, there's no way to describe it. It's just, you have to go out into the world and fail a bunch. So a lot of the lessons that I'm teaching from when I do deign to teach, because I don't really I'm not a very good teacher. I'm not. I'm very impatient with people, and I screw up my meanings periodically. I trip over my words. I don't edit my videos for that very reason, because I don't want to show perfection. I'm a perfectionist, but I'm not that kind of perfectionist. Does that make sense? Because I don't want people to get that impression that somehow that I'm some larger than life. Dude, no, that's not it. I'm just a guy who failed a lot. That's it. I'm just a guy who's lost a lot of money. I have field tested almost every single gimmick and bullshit, everything you've ever heard of. Sign up for this course, go to this meeting. I've done all of that stuff at one time or another, usually early on in my life. And I can tell you, I field tested all of this stuff. I have myth busted all of it personally. So when I'm teaching something, I'm teaching from actual on the ground, real world, real time, in this time frame, right? In this lexicon of reality, this timeline, right? I'm teaching from that perspective, on the ground, from a reality position, not a theoretical book. It's why I don't have a lot of respect for most of the college professors, because most of them are regurgitating what somebody else's thoughts were 100 years ago, 150 years ago, 500 years ago. I'm not saying there's not a place for that, and there's a place to have history and understand the history. That's critical. And I understand the history, and I follow this stuff. I read this stuff. I do the same thing. But you have to gauge that against what's going on right now, because things change so fast, especially right now. They change so quickly. The environment changes so quickly that the environment in which we live currently is openly hostile to anybody trying to live in the real world right now, because so many people at the so-called top they don't live in the real world anymore. This is historically what has happened. This is where history becomes important. This is where economic history and where just knowing some basic history is really, really, really important, which is why it's not taught. That's why it's deliberately not taught to anybody in any, to my knowledge, I don't think any universities really teach this stuff. But if you really understand, once people get to a certain point and they're not allowed to fail, or that people keep going along with it, everybody just keeps, it's it's the emperor's new clothes kind of thing. Like, that's where all this stuff comes from. And once that happens, those people lose all touch with reality. That's why everything right now feels like a nightmare, because it's their dream and it's your nightmare that you're living in. Is any of this making sense? They've lost touch. The analogy I used a long time ago was that of someone, for example purposes only, Michael Jackson. Whether he's guilty of any of that shit or not is irrelevant. The fact is that nobody had the guts to go to him and say, dude, Mike, you're a 35-year-old man. You probably shouldn't be having 10-year-old kids, jumping up and down on your bed at like 9:30 at night, unsupervised. Like, dude, even if there's nothing going on, even if it's totally innocent, you should not do this. This is a bad idea. This is called a bad move, right? But nobody had the guts to say stuff like that because they'll be fired. And that's the other side of that. I'm not afraid to be fired. Like, there's nothing, when you want nothing from anybody on this planet, nobody has any control over you. There's nothing any man on this planet can give me that I would particularly want anymore. I mean that. I don't care if you're Elon Musk or any of those other fucking fake billionaire goombas. Okay? That doesn't matter to me. There's really nothing they can give me that I would particularly want. Because I know it's fake. I know it's bullshit. And when you know all of it's bullshit, it's all a fantasy. Once you know all of that, you become, you transcend this understanding and you go into a different level. You operate on a different level beyond money. And once you operate on a level beyond money, it's very easy to understand everything you're seeing people do. That's why you can understand all this stuff. That's why I see all this for what it is. I see right through most of it. I have blind spots periodically, but I'm pretty good. And it's because of all of that. It's because once you get past all of that, you start to see it for what it really is. And you start to see people for who they really are. Fucked up, degenerate, psychopaths. Pretty much everybody. Bunch of hypocrites for whom I have very little respect. Yes, individual snowflakes, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I get all of that. You're also part of the same decomposing matter that makes up this planet. It's both simultaneously. And that's you, me, everybody. That's the system. That's how it works. That's how this entire system is designed to function. I know it's weird to hear an atheist say designed to function, but until I see otherwise, I have to go with the idea that probably there's a design involved. Whether that's a guy in the clouds with a long white beard that looks like Billy Gibbons or a Big Bang. Both theories are just as fucking wacky to me. But maybe there is something, and that's fine. And I do concede that, by the way. Or maybe it's all a giant cosmic accident. Whatever. But once you transcend the money aspect of it and the finance aspect, you get past it, you start to see it very quickly for what it is. And you only get that, in my opinion, you only get that through hard-won experience. Being in the real world. Getting the shit kicked out of you a lot. Until you start to win. Eventually you will win. If you go up against people that are better than you, and you keep doing that over and over and over and over and over, eventually you will get better than them. Because they start to lose touch with reality. And that's what you're seeing now. So, all of this is very predictable. So, at least to me anyway. But that's where this all comes from. I hope some of this answered your question. I realize it's not terribly satisfying because I don't have anything that I can, there's no magic bullet. This is just go out in the world and fail and then keep failing. And then you'll understand it and you'll understand where the failure comes from. And then you'll eventually get back to the currency is fake. There's no unit of measurement there.